Dearly redheaded, we are choosing consciousness today to get through this thing called grief. Interesting word, grief. It means love, which makes for a mighty good joke, but I'm here to tell you, there's nothing else. Just joy. And if the big picture tends to bring you down, go crazy once your life goes. Woo!
Oh, here we go. This is what we're going to discuss. When I was talking to Will Person, Will was very, very open to my explanation of having a brain injury from straight psychological abuse. I don't remember hitting my head. I have no recollection. I have very little recollection of my childhood. I may have suffered, but I don't think I have. I really feel my brain injury is straight long-term psychological abuse. So in talking to Will about it, I then, I didn't ask him, but I was really trying to figure out what the biggest issue, side effect, and I don't mean dissociation, and I don't mean the things that I do as a result of having the injury. I mean, what is the hardest thing to recognize about myself having a deep brain injury, which, by the way, I haven't started deep brain reorienting yet. I'm headed there. And we'll be very opinionated once it starts. So, my point is, I then did research on cross-referencing PTSD, and I've just decided to call it PTSD, not PTSI, because the injury part there's plenty of people before me who have said it's more of an injury, but a disorder. But the PTSD, those familiar with PTSD being the overarching acronym, I'm succumbing to that. So turns out that being able to sustain joy is much more common than I would have thought. And the research that I came up with is from a Kelly Baez, PhD, and why happiness feels scary. And I will say, where I'm concerned, it's probably affects 2 of 7 days of my week, sometimes 3. Doing this work has definitely made it more challenging than the work of the podcast and what I talk about. So the short-term negative effects of processing and helping other people deal with PTSD, I feel like the short-term detriment will lead to a longer-term benefit. So that's why I'm still plugging ahead, but being very mindful of what I need along the way. So when happiness feels scary, being I can never say this word, familiarity, that word, you know the one I mean?
I do.
With suffering. Trauma survivors often become accustomed to operating in a state of high stress or emotional pain. While uncomfortable, this state feels familiar and predictable. Happiness, on the other hand, can feel like stepping into the unknown. The unfamiliarity of joy can trigger a fight or flight response as the nervous system makes this novelty for potential danger. Number 2, feel of vulnerability. Experiencing happiness requires a degree of vulnerability. It involves opening oneself up to the possibility of loss, disappointment, or failure. For individuals who have been deeply hurt, this openness can feel too risky. The fear of what if this happens doesn't last, may overshadow the ability to enjoy the moment, which I think is at play for what I just described and what I go through, but what I'm willing to accept. Number 3, survivor's guilt. Many trauma survivors wrestle with feelings of guilt when they begin to experience happiness, particularly if they associate their trauma with loss or harm to others. Questions like, do I deserve to feel happy, or how can I be happy when others are suffering, can be internal barriers to embracing joy. That one's big for me. I've talked about it several times when it comes to my sons. I feel like there's a direct conflict between what I can do with my intuition and spirituality, where I feel tremendous peace and release, but I'm still reminded of the pain that I inadvertently inflicted upon them, not having had insight into my own abuse. I mean, I didn't until I did. So guilt is in the works for me. Unprocessed trauma. If trauma remains unresolved, happiness may act as a trigger, surfacing unprocessed emotions or memories. For instance, a sense of safety might remind someone of the last time they felt safe, which could be before their trauma occurred, causing feelings of grief or sadness to emerge. I am happy to say that my instinct was, I knew from processing significant OCD when I was a child. I'd lost an hour and a half a day around the time of my father's death. I wasn't aware of the familial contributions yet. I was always going to my family with OCD, with CPTSD, thinking, and it's so silly, that's why I have to laugh, thinking that they would recognize that I had recognized what was wrong, but the cruel irony is that's what actually caused it. So it's so fucked up. But safety I've taken very, very seriously. I think I've alluded to a time several years ago when my CPTSD was at an all-time high. I had my house outfitted like Fort Knox. I had a panic button. I had an extra dog. I took a gun course. I went shooting. I didn't end up getting the gun. It was too much for me. By the time I would have to access it and know how to use it, it's just, there's just no way I could do that. So it became the thing that I didn't even want to contemplate. But my point is that I went there. So this woman goes on to say, the science of happiness and healing. Happiness isn't just a fleeting emotion. It's a physiological and psychological. I can say physiological. I can't say familiar. Go figure. And psychological state that can be cultivated. However, it requires intentional effort, particularly for those with a history of trauma. Studies in positive psychology suggest that happiness is influenced by three main factors. And this I found interesting. Approximately 50% of our happiness is determined by genetic predispositions. Well, I was really fucked there. I know. Tim just went like this. So that was something that I wasn't aware of, and that's come up a few times for me. So, sorry, folks, but it matters. Circumstances, external factors such as relationships or financial stability account for 10%. I would argue that for some of us is a lot more. Yes. Tim's going like this. And then intentional activities. This is what I can control and attributes to that 70-30 ratio personally that I have between joy and being able to sustain joy, meaning 70% of the time I can, 30% of the time, 2 days a week, if you want to quantify how it affects me. Intentional activities, 40% is shaped by deliberate actions such as practicing gratitude, mindfulness, or kindness, and self-care and exercise and meditation and 67 other things that I do. So that's the 40% for me that's driving everything else, because I got crucified with external factors. And my family, where genetics are concerned, I have a much greater understanding than I once did. So you have the the propensity in the brain. That doesn't always mean it's going to manifest, but their traumatic situations, whatever they endured, then is a double-edged sword. So that's where my compassion comes from. Strategies for embracing happiness after trauma. Some of these sound trite, but I'm going to say them anyway. Start small. Begin by noticing small moments of joy or peace, such as savoring a warm cup of tea or feeling the sun in your face. Build the foundation of micro moments of happiness, can create a sense of safety over time. Practice self-compassion. Dr. Kristen Neff emphasizes that treating ourselves with kindness during moments of struggle fosters resilience. Instead of judging yourself for feeling hesitant about happiness, acknowledge that this reaction is a normal response to your history. And that one saves me a lot. Just, you can't have come through extreme psychological abuse. I'm not just talking for myself, and be aware that you tolerate it much, much longer than now you're tackling it. And I give myself grace all the time. Gradual exposure, similar to exposure therapy for phobias, gradually allowing yourself to experience happiness can reduce its perceived threat. For example, try engaging in an activity you find enjoyable, even if it feels slightly uncomfortable at first. Over time, the discomfort will diminish as your nervous system adjusts. There's a reason I have 5 pets, and I can tell when I'm off self-compassion for self the way I feel about them. I love them all dearly, but I behave differently when I'm more in touch with my feelings. And yes, sometimes it's very hard to feel connected to them. Yet I am aware, which is so important because it has taught me grace for self and grace where it comes to connection with others, which isn't always easy for me. Sometimes it's immediate, but not all the time. And that's directly related to my journey. Reframing your beliefs, reflect on and challenge beliefs that may be blocking your happiness. Journaling prompts like, what does happiness mean to me? Or what fears arise when I think about feeling joy can provide valuable insights. It was really interesting when I was referenced earlier in the last episode, taking a boot camp for publishing. One of the contributors said that oftentimes people write the book about their story, their journey, their family, their marriage, whatever. And the simple activity of simple, I didn't mean to call it simple, but the activity, the act of writing it is enough. Sometimes they opt not to publish. And this person commented that writing about it breaks the family trance for a lot of people. And I thought to myself, yeah, no, it doesn't. It just, for when it's deeply psychological, I think it's more important than any other type of brain injury, if you do end up addressing it, to figuring out how to get it out in a more public way. It might be art, it might be a painting, it may not be writing, but there is something to the public aspect, the witnessing of it, that's different. That's just my 2 cents. I'm not trying to be right. I know for me, if I wrote it and put it on a bookshelf, it wouldn't be enough. It's bigger than that. And I think it might be tied to just that's how I relate to others. Anyway, seeking support. Connect with supportive communities or support groups that understand the nuances of trauma recovery. Sharing experience with others can help normalize the journey and reduce feelings of isolation. That's, I'm incredibly introverted. That works to a certain extent, or I'm concerned. I have this concern that those of us that are more introverted are getting eaten up by society that's very, very more extroverted, it seems, than ever. Extroversion wins. Like, I can't be up in a cabin for 2 months, write a book, and have it have value without 75 million followers. So anyway, that was important for me to disclose. And then I asked AI. That's what I did this morning from 5 to 7. PTSD often severely restricts the capacity for joy by keeping the nervous system in a constant state of threat, making pleasure feel unsafe or unfamiliar. Sustaining joy requires actively retraining the brain to tolerate safety, using small, consistent, sensory-based positive experiences to rewire the nervous system. Some of this is overlaps, but I actually respect what AI came up with. The impact of PTSD on joy, safety versus survival. Trauma conditions the brain to prioritize survival, causing it to view with suspicion calm or joyful states, which can trigger anxiety, emotional numbing. PTSD often causes a shutdown of positive emotions, leading to a loss of interest in previously enjoyed activities. Calling it anhedonia and a feeling of disconnection. That describes, in my case, no longer alcohol. That described history of processing numbing, but I think that is what I described where my pets are concerned, which is just funky called Medina. Brain chemistry, the brain's reward system, particularly the ventral striatum, may show reduced reactive to positive stimuli. Sustaining joy is recovery. Rewiring the nervous system. Experiencing joy actually releases dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin, which help repair neural pathways damaged by trauma. Small, consistent steps, that's an overlap. Redefining safety, also kind of an overlap. And overcoming the fear of joy. Recognizing that feeling unsettled during peaceful moments is a learned, protective, but outdated survival loop. That goes back to 54 years one way, 18 months another. It's, give yourself some grace. I then asked AI, because I became more interested in AI than human beings, why is it still so misunderstood and underaddressed? Due to deeply ingrained stigmas, misconceptions that it only affects combat veterans and its complex, often invisible nature, symptoms are frequently internalized or delayed, leading to misdiagnoses, while societal just get over it attitudes and fear of being labeled broken prevent individuals from seeking help. Stigma and myths. Many believe the myth that it only affects veterans, ignoring that it can stem from trauma, including sexual assault, accidents, or abuse, covert and overt. Misuse of the term, casual use of triggered or PTSD for minor inconveniences has diluted its true meaning, causing it to be dismissed as dramatic rather than a clinical condition. Invisible symptoms. Unlike physical injuries, PTSD symptoms such as memory issues, emotional numbness, or hypervigilance are not immediately visible, making it easy for outsiders to ignore or misunderstand. I had a client meeting I forgot yesterday. I can count the times I have forgotten a client meeting, and it was the right client. When I was late and she called, my whole system went numb. I was so completely mortified and embarrassed that I had forgotten our call, and she just no big deal. We rescheduled. I apologize, no big deal. But she subsequently wrote me, knowing a little bit about me personally, and she said, that's human. That happens. It happens to me too. And I was like, well, there's maybe an actual indication that my system has learned to relax. Wild. And delayed presentation. Symptoms do not always appear immediately, sometimes emerging months or years later, which causes people not to associate their issues with past trauma. Yeah. Why it's underaddressed, internalization and avoidance, lack of proper training. Many healthcare professionals lack specialized training to recognize it as the root of other complaints. Yeah, that times 175 right there. Underlying shame and fear. Individuals often feel guilt, shame, or fear of being deemed violent or unstable, which prevents them from disclosing symptoms. Yeah, and then when you do, there are consequences because people don't get it. It's not humorous, but I have to laugh. And complex diagnosis. With over 20 potential symptoms, diagnosing is time-consuming and complicated, leading it to being overlooked in favor of simpler diagnoses. That was something I would have looked more into, but I was done with the rabbit hole. And then, the last thing I asked AI was why psychologists are so antiquated. And it answered with, due to the persistence of vague, unfalsifiable theories, a reliance on outdated models, and a slow adoption of new paradigms. 25? Key factors enabling this include the continued use of old, deficient theories focusing on past successes, pressure for quick fix, manual-driven treatments over deeper understanding, and a preference for biological explanations over environmental factors. Vague and non-falsifiable theories. Many psychological theories are formulated abstractly, making them difficult to test or disprove, allowing inefficient models to persist. Adherence to the medical model. The continued reliance on a medical model emphasizing biology, i.e. chemical imbalances, while often neglecting the environmental and traumatic factors underlying distress. Yeah, I'd say that's huge. Painting by numbers. And if I can bring it back to when I was putting in the details into the situation, the law situation I'm trying to do something about, the AI was well trained in the misuse of medication. It was really, really very, very, I can't think of a word. It was great to see. It was great to see. Not trying to offend the people that medication benefits. Paint by numbers treatment. Modern clinical practice often favors standardized manuals over complex individual case formulation, reducing therapy to a quick fix approach. And that, I get it, and I accept that happens all the time, but the trauma is so individual. Resistant to paradigm shifts. The field is often characterized by competing tribes rather than integrated, evolving scientific progress, leading to a lack of major new and unified ideas. ignoring contextual factors. A focus on individual pathology rather than the broader sociocultural context can make approaches feel disconnected from modern understandings of mental health. These factors have created a theory crisis where outdated yet popular ideas remain in circulation, hindering the advancement of the discipline. And you can see that like playing out for people who think in pictures, patterns, and numbers. I do. I mean, you can see 27, 25. I looked at it reverse. No, I didn't. Never mind.
You added.
Yeah, like you've caught on. I don't have a left hemisphere, right? It's debatable. These factors have created a theory crisis where outdated yet popular ideas remain in circulation, hindering the advancement of the discipline. I see shit like this play out all the time in various systems, but specifically in psychology. And it's going to be interesting because episodes 4 and 5 this week are going to be with Dr. Kerry McAvoy, and Kerry's driving the bus as far as what she wants to talk about. But one thing I'm reminded to bring up with Kerry is now that the line in the sand has been, well, the Lanius and Corrigan research says, hey, PTSD is deeper in the brain than we once thought. We will still continue to hear for years that it's the amygdala, the hippocampus, and what have you that are definitely affected. But that it's going to be really interesting to see how that new research becomes mainstream and affects treatments to or for the brain to a much greater successful resolve. And I think it's the first time doing this podcast has allowed me to see how important new research is where psychology is concerned and how much is reliant on old research. And I would trust that old research unless I knew enough and was interested enough to say, no, there's something more going on there. And when we don't have the professionals going, nope, there's something more going on there, therein lies the rub. The professionals aren't asking the right questions. The patients are, which I realize is I don't want to pick on people, but when you're in pain and you're trying to not want to you're wanting to move more quickly. I worked on PTSD for 10 years. The new research and the things I'm going to be trying going forward just totally eclipse. And to think that it was going on and being researched in certain parts of the world and other parts of the world are years away from learning about it and putting into play, it's just sad to me. It's just sad. But it's the way it is. Just like poor Mary Magdalene, man. Boy, did she get the shaft. All right. Is there anything you'd like to say, Mr. Tim, about whatever I just spoke to?
That's a good question. I mean, I can speak on a lot of that. You know what I was going to ask? With the Lanius model you're bringing up, what are they saying is also being affected besides the amygdala, the hippocampus? What do they think things are?
Deeper in the brain, below the amygdala. Okay. And there are multiple areas that on a podcast, I don't know, a handful of weeks ago, I think I handled it. I don't remember if I was alone or with a professional, but I destroyed trying to pronounce the areas of the brain affected, but they're essentially deeper in the brain than the amygdala in going towards the brainstem. How they know that, and you know, I didn't go that far down the rabbit hole because when you can't pronounce something, it's like, why would I
It's all right.
try to, but yeah, it's something that if you would have asked me, I knew it,
Yeah.
but it almost feels to me physically deep in the brain. It almost feels spinal to me, top of the spine.
Gotcha. Yeah. I was like, are we thinking more towards like the cortex and everything, or
the prefront?
no? Well, not that, but like the cerebral cortex on your back. Are you talking about closer to that, the cerebellum, things like that?
The cerebellum came up, but that, I'm not a guru with
Totally understood. Yeah.
and the manifestation, and I'm being flooded right now with a lot of things I want to say to you, but what happens is when something happens, like when I forgot that client appointment is a perfect example. It's actually very similar to something they cited when I watched a deep brain session.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever hits the brain before that shock feeling that I had when that happened, that's what they're trying to anticipate. And that area of the brain is what they're focusing to prevent
From firing off, basically.
Yes.
Before it floods you with cortisol
Yes.
and adrenaline and makes you feel like crap.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. So how they know that, I don't know. But there's still, well, I it's not that I'm ungrateful for people explaining the physical effects to the brain, because the physical effects from psychological abuse are real. So I shouldn't be upset that any attention to it is good attention, but it's just much richer and deeper than we once thought. And we only just recently thought the other things were affected. So just kind of speedballing it, I guess.
That's fair. You have me thinking, I'm like, I should look out and see when the DSM-6 comes out, unless it's already out, but I don't think it is yet.
How often do they update it?
It depends.
Well, I've heard DSM-5 for forever. It's had to be.
Absolutely, yeah. The DSM-5, I think, is the current one.
Yeah.
I believe they were working on the DSM-6, but I was trying to remember what was supposed to come out.
And that's what does it stand for? Diagnostic
statistics, or what person just said the other day. I think it is manual, but let me see.
That's what helps.
This is terrible.
That's all right. I've been off today. I mean, I'm doing the best I can, but I've been off. But the DSM is what professionals use to diagnose.
Yeah, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders.
So it'll be interesting what you're saying, what it will update where the brain and PTSD are concerned.
Not yet released for that. But yeah, exactly. I would love to know what they're going to change in the DSM-6 for certain things.
I had asked, and I don't remember the answer, and I asked a handful of people, and just like any other field, sometimes people don't know. But I had asked when it came to my situation, when they were able to hold me in the hospital, I said, can't you hold me for concerns around PTSD? And I've been told yes, and I've been told no. So they almost had to elevate it to be able to give me respite, let's say. That's not what it was.
Sure.
But let's say that's what it was. And I don't quite understand why PTSD wouldn't, if somebody was very, very concerned about somebody, my situation was misconstrued, so I'm not using myself as an example, but I find it very sad that that's not a justifiable reason to hold somebody. And whether it is or not, I'm not quite sure. That would actually be a really good topic. Oh well. We'll figure it out. Thank you for listening and supporting Natural Born Redhead. If you follow the bouncing balls, please like and subscribe. If you know someone interested
in sparing others grief and inciting joy, message me on Facebook or reach out via my website, Natural Born Redhead. J Ma.